What's up guys, welcome to the video. Quick update on the 240SX project. I've been doing a little bit of work here and there with the camera off. It is now currently Christmas Eve night, about 8 o'clock. I have the turbo installed and I have all the lines made up, and I've also started running all the main power wires from the battery relocation in the trunk all the way to the front. So we have the battery box right here. That will lead to this main 150 amp fuse, and then that power wire runs up through the quarter panel, down behind this cover, underneath the carpet along here. Then I have a hole drilled in the firewall. That pops out right here through a nice little grommet, goes up to the starter. I have a leg off the starter that goes down to the alternator, then alternator up to this terminal. And this terminal shares power from that to the engine compartment fuse box right here. And hopefully this video is a little bit better framed. I did get a new wide angle lens attachment for this camera, so I don't have to hold the camera so far away. I can hold it a little closer and not be kind of awkward and strenuous on my arm. But right now I think the next step for us is to get the intake installed so I can have the engine harness thrown in this thing. We can start plugging that in and then adding all the sensors we need to the Link ECU. We're going to be adding an intake air temp sensor, an oil pressure sensor. Along with that, I have a Works fuel pump hanger we're going to be installing and transferring the pump and everything over to, along with running all brand new 6AN lines from the tank forward with a filter inline and our E85 flex fuel sensor inline. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get start banging this stuff out, and let's get the intake fully installed. Intake manifold fully installed here. I did start and get the harness just thrown in. All I basically did so far is just I popped it through the firewall here, and we have it coming out through the firewall out the dash. I'm just gonna leave this right here for right now because I had to put the ECU in. I have a couple expansion port wires for the intake air temp, oil pressure sensor, flex fuel sensor, stuff like that that's hardwired to the actual ECU board. So I'll put those in once the ECU's in because I gotta run those through the firewall also and actually cut those length. So right now let's just get the rest of the harness fully routed on the intake. So we have the harness now, at least the upper half underneath the intake fully installed here. Now brings me over to the ECU itself. The guy who installed this ECU actually did a really good job with the expansion harness that they installed. So everything was nicely twisted together and fully heat shrinked back to the ECU, which is good, but I need to add sensors to it. So I have the expansion port here, and I'm kind of just teeing off my own power 5 volts and signals to this individual harness I have laid out here. So that will run to the intake air temp and oil pressure, oil temp circuits, while leaving the pre-existing ones for fuel pressure and E85 for the flex fuel sensor intact. So I have everything added here, repinned in here. I'll get this cleaned up and then we can get the ECU installed and shove these wires through the firewall. So that's it all now cleaned up, at least inside the ECU. And then I have my extension leads right here. I have all my pinouts and Sharpie on my cabinet here. So we'll get this thing closed up and then we can get the ECU thrown in the car. We can shove these wires to the firewall and then we can start wiring up all the additional sensors. All right guys, so now it's a few days after that last clip you just saw. It was Christmas Eve in that clip. Took the next couple of days off, kind of just enjoyed it with family. So now we are back in the garage working on the 240. I didn't film this, but I did get the ECU installed and I have the oil pressure sensor connector and intake air temp sensor here. That's all running down along the harness and into the cabin to the ECU. The entire harness is essentially finished now. It's kind of just tidying up, and as we make parts like the downpipe for the O2 sensor and intercooler piping and the intake air temp bung welded on, then we can work more on plugging stuff in. But all the actual adding sensors and connectors and routing it, all that's finished. So I think now that we have everything kind of finalized on this intake side, there's not going to be anything else that kind of pops out and surprises us, so we'll know where everything is. I'm going to work on getting these old fuel lines disconnected, and we'll start running our 6AN lines and new pump hanger from the tank all the way to the rail. We're going to run a fuel filter inline and our flex fuel sensor on the return. So let's get started by removing this old hanger. Start dissecting what this actually is, because I'm actually not sure what pump is in this car. I do have the pump fully off, and I googled the part number here. It's a TI Automotive F90000267. A quick Google search shows that is a Walbro part number for a Walbro 450. So seeing that it's a Walbro 450, we don't really need to upgrade pumps or anything. This is plenty for the power level we're going to be making. So we'll get that. We'll take off this sending unit, and then everything else that's on the stock hanger we'll just leave in place. We don't need it anymore, and we'll switch over to our new hanger. So I didn't have any rubber isolator for the back of here, so all I did was I cut some leftover fuel hose and tucked it behind the pump, and that actually gave me a perfect alignment here to where it's not cockeyed or anything. It's perfectly straight to the feed fitting up here. So now all we have to do is put the return bulkhead in and have that hose come down, and then swap over the fuel level sensor and then throw it back in the car. So now we have the fuel pump setup all finished here. Have the Walbro 450 in there, wired up to the top, and the level sensor is well wired up to the top. So let's get this thrown in there and we can start removing all the old lines. I really quickly wired up just the harness to the hanger itself. I might down the road redo the pump ground and power wire because it's not that far a run. I already have an aftermarket relay in here for the fuel pump, so it's not that much to extend these two wires to a little thicker gauge to the hanger to make sure there's no voltage drop issue or anything to the fuel pump. But now that that's all done, I'm gonna get ahead and get after it. I'm gonna start removing all the factory hard lines underneath the car. The only line we are keeping underneath it is the rear brake line to the rear brakes where it tees off. We're keeping that. Everything else is gonna go in the bin. I got most of them out up until the subframe, and I already plan on removing the subframe to do bushings and all the arms, so I did go ahead and start getting the e-brake stuff and calipers off so I can just drop the whole subframe. Makes no sense to work around it. You can definitely do all the fuel lines with the subframe in. Since I have to do subframe bushings and arms and all that, just makes sense to pull the subframe so I can run all the lines a lot cleaner also. So I have all the brake lines off, the e-brake stuff off. All I gotta do is drop the rest of the exhaust and the subframe should just come right out. Subframe out and on the ground, out from underneath the car. That will be probably next video, doing the arms, subframe bushings, and just a general cleanup of it all. But now with that out, we have really easy, close access to getting all these fuel lines out and then getting all the new ones ran. So let's get underneath the car, let's get all those fuel lines out of there and start putting in the new stuff. All right guys, so this is what we are working with. I'm gonna try my best to get footage of this. Just kind of a tight and cramped area. Fuel pump up there, our AN line is gonna come through here, down above the subframe, and then scooch over along this frame rail and ride that all the way down to the front. So first things first is I'm gonna mount the fuel filter on the front of the frame rail, so that we have our point A to point B down there. We can make that line, and then do the same for the return from the flex fuel sensor back to the tank. All right, so filming the process was kind of difficult, so I kind of just did it. We have it going up to the fuel tank down through here. Plenty of clearance between this. I might trim the shield a little bit or just kind of bend it or whatever, it's just plastic, but we have that run down there, up over where the diff would be. Have it along the frame rail down there, along through here, and then kind of zip tied along the brake lines. And then I have a fuel filter mounted up there, I'll show you right now. So this is the fuel filter, comes down here and follows along the frame rail. So now we gotta go from this fuel filter to the front of the engine where the fuel rail is. So we can go there, and the regulator's mounted on the back of the fuel rail, and that fuel rail from the regulator will come back down here, and I gotta find a spot to mount a flex fuel sensor. All right guys, so we have the feed basically totally completed. This is what we got for the rail side. So we have a 180 fitting, which I typically try to avoid using just because the flow, comes in, it's gotta do a really harsh turn, but I think this is the cleanest route to go. So then that pops off here, comes up from the filter down there, rounds up through here, and then I'll have these secured together when I do the return off the regulator here. They'll come straight down, and then I'll merge these together with a clamp or something just so they hold nice and tight together. Amazon was supposed to deliver my flex fuel sensor bracket today, but it says it's going to show up Monday instead. Today's Saturday, so unfortunately I won't be able to finish the fuel system this weekend, but whenever that comes in, I'll probably just update it on the next video when I'm doing the subframe. As for now, the whole plan with the car is finish up all the fuel lines, get this subframe completely cleaned up. I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm not gonna powder coat it. I'm just gonna give it a quick wipe down, install all my new arms, install the solid subframe bushings, and then I'm debating on either getting it open and welding it or just welding this LSD. I've heard a lot of mixed things with the Z32 LSDs. For daily driving around town, they're okay. Anything that's like more dedicated track use, people say just either weld it or get like a two-way or an open and weld that. I don't really have an interest in trying to track down an open Z32 diff, so I'm probably just gonna weld the LSD in that. Seems what a lot of people online choose to do. But you'll see all that in the next video. Since I won't have parts until Monday, I'm just gonna do some off-camera work like finishing up the front end, getting the tension rod bracket finished, all that stuff back together, and probably finishing the return line. It's all kind of the same process as a million videos on YouTube of people making AN lines. It's not complicated, just a little tedious. But for now guys, if you did enjoy the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.